So gold prices, there's not much happening, but then the picture sort of remains intact. Whatever we've seen happen is what we're seeing play out at this point, because gold prices did edge up despite an uptick in the US dollar, and as investors awaited key US inflation data and the conclusion of the US Federal Reserve's two-day monetary policy meeting as well, like Snehi mentioned. And that also is something that we saw the gold investors also taking note of. Now, when you take a look at crude oil futures, then they held on to gains Tuesday as OPEC stuck to its demand forecasts, counting on steady economic growth this year. So oil prices rallied more than 2% on Monday, with US crude oil booking its best day since February 8th. And the market has recovered the losses from the last week, where we saw that sell-off to 4-month lows in the wake of the decision by OPEC Plus to increase crude production in October. That is something that had investors quite jittery, and that is something that we saw an impact of on prices as well. Let's take a look at prices then, and when you take a look at WTI, you're looking at $77 per barrel levels. So an uptick of about 16 cents or 0.2%, and year-to-date US oil has gained about 8.7%. When you take a look at Brent as well, you're looking at $81 per barrel levels and an uptick of 29 cents or 0.4% thereabout, and year-to-date that contract as well is ahead 6.3%. So that's the kind of advance that you're seeing there on a year-to-date basis. Now, money managers cut their net long position in Brent by 69% week over week to the lowest level since 2014 in the wake of the OPEC Plus decision. And that was something that JP Morgan highlighted, and despite the bearish sentiment last week, Goldman Sachs also forecast that the market will be entering into a deficit on summer fuel demand that will push Brent back up to $86 per barrel in the third quarter. Now, traders are of course looking ahead to the conclusion of the Federal Reserve meeting and US inflation data for May that we've talked about earlier, and the IEA will also be releasing their monthly oil market report on the same day as well. And you also have, let's stay with the oil market, and you also have OPEC that has come out with some commentary, and they've retained their forecast for relatively strong global growth in global oil demand in 2024, and the stance retained despite lower than expected use in the first quarter. Now, OPEC believes that travel and tourism will aid consumption in the second half of the year, and the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies has also said that demand will rise by 2.25 million barrels per day in 2024 and by 1.85 million barrels per day in 2025. Now, both forecasts were unchanged from the last month. So that is some key commentary coming in on that front as well, Snehi.
Absolutely. Let's also take a look at all the important events that you need to be watching out for in today's trading session. Lots to watch out for. In terms of our Indian markets today, you have trade data, and you also have industrial production as well as the all-important CPI coming out. Now, for the US markets, like we told you, CPI followed by that FOMC rate decision, that's going to be happening. Also from China, you can see on the ticker as of now, you have consumer prices that have come out. So the CPI and PPI print have come out. We'll take you through all of those numbers as and when we have more details on them. Now, shifting focus back home, let's also talk about what's happening on the corporate action front. It's going to be the investor day of Tata Communications. So it's going to be a stock to watch out for today. The board of Sasuke and Tech is going to be meeting for general purposes. It's also the last day to buy the shares of Tata Chemicals to be eligible for their dividend. 361 is going to be one to watch out for because they will be rolling out a preferential issue of shares. And lastly, watch out for Sobha in today's trading session, because that board is going to be meeting to mull fundraising today. So it's going to be an interesting stock to watch out for as well. On the primary markets front, it's the last day to subscribe for the Ixigo IPO. So watch out for that as well. And in other news, we also have a PPI from Japan that we'll talk you through that as well. And in terms of what's been happening back home, the chief ministers of Odisha as well as Andhra Pradesh are all set to take oath today. So watch out for all of these events in today's trading session.
Well, absolutely. Lots of cues to take note of and keep an eye on. An important day shaping up for the US on the macro front in a dual strike that starts this morning with the consumer price index reading and ends with the Federal Reserve's policy meeting as well. Investors will gain insight on the direction of the economy and whether policymakers can finally start easing stance anytime soon. May CPI is largely expected to log an annual rise of 3.4%, numbers not dramatically different from that April reading as well. Meanwhile, Street largely expects the central bank to hold rates alongside all eyes will be on their inflation as well as growth projections for the years to come. And the informal consensus on the street is that the Fed will adjust the path of its pivotal dot plot upwards. So that is an important update that we'll be keeping an eye on as well.
Well, and the macro story doesn't end here, because back in Asia, both China and India inflation figures will be in focus. China's annual inflation rate was at 0.3% in May, holding steady for the second straight month while falling short of market forecasts of 0.4%. It was the fourth straight month of consumer inflation amid an ongoing recovery in domestic demand. Now, separately, India's inflation rate is also forecast to climb marginally to 4.89% according to economist polls, slightly higher than what we saw coming in April at 4.83%.
Well, absolutely. And meanwhile, the World Bank has pegged India's economic growth at 6.7% for the financial year 2026, says India will remain the fastest growing large economy, and they've also retained the financial year 25 growth rate at 6.6%. The bank has also raised its forecast for the global and American economy up from its previous estimates for 2024, and a downgrade has come for regions like Africa as well as the Middle East.
Alright, let's shift focus and talk about some stock-specific action then. Apple shares have closed higher by 7% on a fresh record high of $207.15 per share. Moves follow that long-awaited announcement from the company on AI at its annual developer conference. Analysts believe the new AI features will drive consumers to upgrade their devices, since the tools are only available on newer models.
I think he does have a viewpoint that I think some people do share in terms of data privacy, data integrity. But I think Apple is, I think in terms of, I think there would be very good data privacy guidelines that they will implement. First, with the permission that I think the users would need to basically check, right, that box. And I think they do regionally in their own data centers. On the hardware side, they plan to use their own chips in their data centers. So that will be upholding a very high security standards. And so a lot of, I think that the chat data or the access data, especially I think this time the chatbot will be released, that's basically a much smarter chat. So I think I do not have very large concern on the data privacy.
Alright, there you have it. So that was the view coming in from Ray Wong, partner at Asymmetry Capital, and exactly what he had to say about Apple's growth roadmap as well. Meanwhile, you did have Oracle that jumped as much as 11% in after-hours trade after the stock maker announced cloud deals with Google as well as OpenAI despite fourth quarter results that fell short of expectations. Revenue increased 3% year over year during the quarter, and their cloud services and license support segment generated $10.23 billion in revenue, a growth of 9%.
Alright, well, it was a winning day not only for Oracle but also for Spotify shares, because they too soared as Wall Street bulls gave a thumbs up to the company's plans to hike prices for its premium US subscription plans. Remember, the stock is up about 70% since the start of the year, so big moves already coming in, and the upcoming price hikes, which begin in July, are between $1 and $3. Analysts say the move could mean more increases for other music streamers, much to the chagrin of consumers.
Alright, then those were your daily dose of global updates coming in to go with your morning cup of coffee, but we'll take.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.